Welcome to Flourishing in Faith, the place where young women discover stories of hope, truth, and glory, as well as find life hacks to live their faith more fully. Hi, I'm Julie, a daughter of God, certified professional life coach, wife, and mother of four. After trying to do everything the wrong way, I've been overwhelmed by healing, joy, and freedom through Jesus and the gifts of grace He makes available to each and every one of us. My passion is to share what I've been given with others. I'm glad you're here. Let's begin. Today, we're going to be talking about a time when I was in high school and I was in the ICU waiting room and I got a glimpse of the light of Christ and someone witnessed their faith to me without even knowing it. So when I was about 16, my best friend's boyfriend was in a really terrible motorcycle accident. He was alive but unresponsive when they got him down into the ICU. And my best friend and I drove down there to sit and wait in the ICU waiting room with his family. And it was a very dark day. It didn't look good. He had his helmet on, but it really wasn't enough. And at that time, he was on life support, but his brain was swelling from the impact. And that night, we stayed up all night long, waiting for these infrequent updates from downcast-looking doctors. At that time, I was far, far, far from my faith, and my life was kind of a mess. I was adrift, and this horrible situation made me feel even more lost and confused. And I wish I could tell you a miraculous healing occurred for our friend, but that part of the story does not have a happy ending, at least not one that we can perceive on this side of eternity. Our wonderful friend passed away not long after this accident. It was a dark time, and I would remain lost from Jesus and spiritually blind to Jesus's love and goodness. And from there, I'd wander further from him in this obstinate, prideful, really ignorant rebellion against God for almost another decade of my life before I would finally come to the end of myself and find Jesus again. But there was one event that stands out like a lighthouse in the midst of this darkness. And I remember it to this day. That's what I want to talk about today. So I remember it was probably 2 a.m. and we're waiting in the ICU and there's nothing else to do but kind of stare at each other. I mean, who can read those crappy lobby magazines in a moment like that? And back then, cell phones weren't nearly as entertaining or addicting as they are now. And there were others in the waiting room with our group, other families quietly waiting to hear news of their loved ones as well. And I remember sitting across from this middle-aged Hispanic woman. She had these prayer beads in her hand, and she was silently praying, and she looked like someone who had a life vest in the middle of a hurricane. She looked like someone who had an anchor in a terrible storm. She was salt and light, like she was someone who made me thirsty for Christ because I saw that she had this gift of prayer in the middle of this terrible event. So this woman was praying her rosary. I wanted what she had. I didn't know how to get faith, but she planted a seed in my heart in that moment, and that seed would lay dormant and grow decades later. And so first I'll say, if you're like me and you're not familiar with the rosary, it's a spiritual weapon that Christians have been praying for over 800 years. And each bead is a prayer. It takes about 20 minutes to pray it. There are many, many Christians who pray the rosary every single day. I tell my kids that the rosary is like the original fidget spinner because each bead is there to help us focus our body on what we're doing. You use each set of 10 beads, it's called a decade, to meditate on a different event in the life of Christ. You can imagine before people could read and write, or before the Bible was easily accessible, this was a great way to teach believers about the main events in the life of Christ. So each decade you would think about a different part of his life, so his birth, or his first miracle, turning water into wine at the wedding at Cana, or we contemplate his crucifixion or his resurrection. So now you can learn to pray the rosary on YouTube or Google in the blink of an eye. If you're not currently praying the rosary, if you never have, I would just invite you to consider it because so much grace has been given to me from praying this way. And like when I can't sleep or when I'm anxious or anything like that, it's like It's like God is holding your hand when you're holding those beads. It's just been a big gift, so I wanted to share that. So today's life hack is to do as St. Paul tells us in the letter of Thessalonians, where he says to pray without ceasing, because you never know when you will be shining the light of Christ in a dark place, planting seeds of faith, and never, ever, ever get to see the fruit of it. But that woman, she impacted my life that day, even though she never said a word to me. Okay, let me end with one of my favorite prayers from Thomas Merton. My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I don't see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I'm following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does, in fact, please you. And I hope that I have that desire in all that I'm doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, will I trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. So I just love that. It says, you'll lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. And I feel like that's what happened that day. Thank you for listening to Flourishing in Faith. You can learn more about this ministry, share prayer requests, send questions, or even share your own glory story by visiting lifewithchristisbeautiful.com. If you found this episode helpful and think others might too, please rate us and review us or share this with others. All right, ladies, as Pope Francis says, please pray for me. I'll be praying for you. Thanks.